Trying to find my way, 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 trying to find my way. I'm trying, change me.
My faith is in God alone, beyond a reasonable doubt. This brainstorm pouring rain on your season of drought. Just trying to lay a couple seeds in the mouth. Thanks for listening. You ever get the feeling you was missing?
What up, y'all? It's your hometown hero, Scott Lane, the Black Bruce Wayne, a.k.a. the real Adam Coleman. So, you rhyme with Tru-ID. So, anybody who's been following the Tru-ID show for a while has heard me say that this podcast is really a part of my personal journey, right? Some years ago, I found myself needing answers to the objections to Christianity that I was running into. Like, you know, is Christianity the white man's religion? What's up with the whole Jesus horse thing? Just running into Hebrew Israelites. I was getting tagged up online, man. I was, I found myself having to really dig deep and really search out some answers. And at first, I really wasn't aware of any resources out there that were addressing these kinds of issues. So when I launched this podcast, my intent was to be a platform where not only would I be able to help answer these questions for others who were, dealing with the same thing, but also I wanted to be like a bullhorn, to get the word out where people could go find answers. And that's really what today's episode is all about. The guest we've got today, honestly, it's just way overdue in terms of having him on the show. He's the co-author of a book called The Round Table, which is just a really unique contribution to the urban apologetics movement. I'm excited to have him here to tell us all about it. So let me introduce you to a writer for the cause, apologist / author, Tyran Laws. How you doing there, brother?
Man, I'm doing well, Mr. Coleman. I'm so glad to be on, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure. I'm really excited to, have you to tell us about, this book that you got. But before we get there, man, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you and how'd you get into urban apologetics ministry? Yeah, well, let's see. I'm a pastor on the south side of Chicago. I'm a father of 3 boys and a husband. My wife, Dr. Marcella Laws, we've been married for 11 years, and currently I'm also a PhD student at Wheaton College in New Testament Biblical Studies, and second year, and so glad to be on that journey. And it's interesting how I got into urban apologetics. I kind of got in through the back door, so to speak. Okay.
My goal was just to be a good exegete. I just wanted to be able to rightly handle his word, and so I got my master's in Greek and Hebrew exegesis, and that opened up a lot of other things, for texts for Second Temple Judaism and background stuff, ancient Near Eastern stuff, and all those kind of different things. And so it was actually my co-author who I would say he's the one that has. Dr. Armand, he's like the apologist at heart, for real.
Okay. And
he was engaging into a lot of those online conversations on social media that you referred to right before you introduced me. That was him. He was the one that was having all of those conversations. And so one day he reached out to me and said, "Hey man, listen, man, it's like me against like 10 of these guys, and they all got different type of religious perspectives. I need you to come on and help me just address some of these issues." And when he first brought it to me, I was like, "Oh man, I just ain't got time, man. I had just started pastoring full time, right. And I was like, man, you get into those debates and those conversations, man. Those things can last.
You ain't got to tell me, bro. You ain't got to tell me, bro. I know it. So, yeah, man.
Yes, sir. So I was like, man, I just ain't got the time, man. But you know what? He said, well, I'm going to add you to this group anyway, man. And, if you got time or, you can take a little few minutes out of your time. And, man, he added me, man. And I saw some of the just anti-Christian, anti-black church, anti-black Christian sentiments. And I just like, man, I cannot sit on the sideline and not address some of this stuff, man. And that was my journey. And ever since then, I got pulled in, man.
Wow, man. Well, first I wanted to address something, man. Shout out to Chicago. I was up in Illinois, man, earlier this year. Shout out to my man Tim Allison out there in Bloomington, Illinois. And matter of fact, when they asked me, because I think I flew into O'Hare, they asked me, if there's anything that I need, as I'm making the trip to come speak and whatnot out there. And I said, man, if I'm flying to Chicago, all I'm asking for is a bulletproof vest, bro. That's all I need right there,
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
man.
they're not playing around in Chicago, man. I'm like, nah, I ain't about that life, man. I'm a chill dude, man. Give me a bulletproof vest.
That's funny, man. We, you know what? But we try to do something. It's something that doesn't make the media outlets, man. But churches all across the country, all across the city, we're doing something, man. There's something called the Peace Campaign, where churches are having a collaborative effort with the police department, and we are being stationed at the hot spots, the most crime infested areas and most crime infested times. So 9 p.m. to 12 midnight, like we out praying, man, doing some evangelism, doing stuff, and we're seeing change and transformation happen in those areas, man. And we've been doing it for about 3 years.
Stop
man.
Playing.
Yep.
So wait, dang, go on, man, because I got to get away from my notes right quick first. I know we got these questions we want to get to, but that's fascinating right there. So with this peace initiative, you've got churches, coming together, and you're saying that they're out on the streets at peak, like, I guess, crime time. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. We were so when we first started, then we went all the way up from like 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. in the morning. We found out though, about midnight, we call it pushing the darkness back, man. And so the light comes in, and we come in. Yep. And so, man, we out there. In fact, it's been going on for about 3 years, and we always start right after Memorial Day, and we go up until Labor Day.
Wow. I mean, it's so crazy. I mean, and see, that's what I'm talking about. I just love doing the show, man, seriously, because, when I first started doing this show, I mean, of course, you always run into objections to Christianity, I guess to the church about, the black church ain't doing nothing for the community. I don't care if it's Comedics, Hebrew Israelites, Moors, whatever. I mean, and my thing is, y'all can say what y'all want. You know what I'm saying? But, I mean, we got boots on the ground in Chicago right now. You know what I'm saying? The black church got boots on the ground in Chicago doing real work. Show me some other groups that's out there doing the same thing. I'm just saying.
That's right.
I'm just saying.
That's right.
You can talk all this trash all day long, but we got a guy, who right now on the line who's on the front lines dealing with the crime in Chicago, and it's a shame that, like you said, I mean, it's not getting any national coverage. I've never heard that. I've never heard anything about what you guys are doing. That's crazy to me.
And people actually, we got people, man, flying in. We had a sister from New York that drove in because she wanted to be a part of it, man.
Wow.
So it's almost like an underground movement that believers are becoming cognizant of. But no, the media outlets, the politicians, they're not talking about it.
Come on, man. Yep. And see, that's golly, I mean, that could be a whole nother discussion, to be honest with you. But I mean, it's a shame because, if you got brothers out here getting shot or brothers out here doing wrong, then the media is going to be on the spot, ready to either show us as victims or victimizers, right? But when we got people that's out here doing work and really seeing change in their own communities. I'm talking about black faces, and I'm not discrediting anybody else who may be involved. I'm just saying how the media portrays us. You see what I'm saying? When we got people out there who are bringing hope, bringing the gospel first and foremost, and seeing real change in the communities, the media, politicians, nowhere to be found. That's a shame, man. That's a shame.
Yeah, man.
Wow. Well, I just want to say to my listeners out there, because I do got people out there in Chicago. I mean, definitely, first of all, anybody who rocks with the show, definitely send prayers their way, man. Definitely be praying for the guys out there, for their safety, and that the gospel be brought and that hearts and lives be changed, man. Definitely be praying for you guys out there. And if anybody out there who's in that area can support, get out there and support, get your hands dirty, and really make a difference in this world with the gospel and love of Christ. So that's phenomenal, man. That just blew my mind just right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir, man. Yes,
man. So where are we at, man? I lost track, but okay. So you get into urban apologetics. You were drawn in through online, and I think that's a lot of people's testimony, if you will, just getting in these online debates. Let me ask you this: like, when you first encountered it, these challenges to Christianity, were you shocked by it? I mean, was it something that kind of caught you off guard, or was it like, oh, okay, I could see how this has grown into what it is? Like, what was your first maybe reaction to it?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I think what was like I understood some of the contention. I understood some of the questions. Right? It's like you just being truthful and honest. What shocked me was how intense the anti-Christian sentiment was, and particularly the anti-Black Christian. Man, it just floored me, especially in light of just how instrumental the Black church has been for Black communities. And I was just like, man, where in the world is all of this hatred coming from, man?
Yeah,
so that was the thing that, and then to be, when you get into online communities, online social communities, it's like everybody is against the Christian, so you can have people whose ideologies are miles apart, but they see a common denominator and a common enemy in the Christian.
That's
so,
true.
Yeah.
Very true, man. So like you said, you didn't stay on the sideline, man. You hopped on in there, and I guess the culmination of that was this book. I definitely want to get into that. Tell us a little bit about the Roundtable, man. How did that book come about, and what is like the central premise of it?
Yeah, so you called it, man. We were Dr. Armand and myself. We were engaging into these conversations, and we started to see that it wasn't just in the online community. We started seeing remnants of these type of ideologies in our churches, at the barbershop, man. It's like everywhere you look, you're like, okay, you know what, man? So I went to Rahsaan Armand. I said, man, we're making all these arguments, man. We putting in this work, man, and we see how pervasive it's becoming. When we started. It's crazy because when we started kind of addressing it, it was we were tagging it as marginal beliefs, but like now it's become like mainstream. That was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
When we kind of got into it, it was just like it hadn't got the momentum that it has now. But essentially, as the result of that was this book, and the book essentially addresses like 6 ideas, 6 ideologies that we consider dangerous to the Black Christian experience. And so we're dealing with Hebrew Israelites, religion of Kemet's, the pluralistic Christian. This is the pluralism says there's many ways to God. The pluralistic Christian will just say that that Jesus is the best way to God. He's not the only way according to that perspective. He's just the best way.
Gotcha.
And we found out that that's how a lot of Christians kind of actually think that. A lot of people who consider themselves Christians. And so
it's true.
Yeah, we dealt with all that stuff, man. Some of the Africanism, some of the Pan-Africanism religions, like, ancestor worship and some of this other stuff that we're starting to see to permeate our communities, man. So we just kind of addressed this, and we did it in two type of structures. The first of each chapter is kind of a story or narrative form, and it gives the reader an opportunity to engage engage these personalities as if they were, in some cases, engaging them online, and then we come back with like an analytical part and addressing that at the end of each chapter.
Yeah. I just love the way you guys did that, man, because it's very interesting. A lot of people know I'm a social worker by trade, and actually how I got into social work was, I can't remember the author's name, but it was a lady who wrote a book about different runaways who ended up like in this halfway house, and they were real stories, but they she basically compiled them all together, and that inspired me to end up being a social worker. Matter of fact, I think she was from Chicago, as a matter of fact, now I think about it. And so it's just using that story form to really engage the reader, I think is so powerful, because it's if you just hit people with information, you can easily get lost in just argumentation, but really bringing it home, I think, through the stories is a very powerful tool, man. Definitely a powerful tool, So how's the response been, with the book so far?
Well, you know what, man, it's one thing to become an author. It's another thing to be the marketer, man. And
sure.
We, I think 2016 is when the book dropped, and we had some good good reviews, man. Had a lot of good pre-sales, and it was kind of people were getting it kind of all over the country, man. So we were really really excited about that. And last time I heard, we even had some. I think there was a Denver seminary, an extension in Corpus Christi, Texas, had actually put it on their curriculum, and I believe some seminary in New York. So we were very excited about that, man. So the fact that it was trying to get it in an academic context as well as in an ecclesial context, you know. So we were
right.
I think in this last year or so, I'm back in school. Pastor Armand, I mean, he was already an author. He's working on his second book. So we just haven't had the time to really push it and to market it. And that's why I also appreciate being on your show, because that helps get the word out a little bit more.
Well, see, and that's the reason why I asked the question, because I guess I kind of asked for selfish reasons, to be honest with you. I'm trying to get a lay of the land as far as where we are as an urban apologetics movement. And one thing that I'm finding, and you know, some people would disagree with me, but I think when you look at the apologetics community as a whole, right, it's generally speaking oriented towards the types of objections that white people deal with. To be honest with you, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a big trend, about new atheism, and to be honest with you, I mean, generally speaking, black folks aren't really dealing with atheism. It's not to say that atheism isn't present in our communities. It is a growing problem, but generally speaking, we're dealing with other theisms. You know what I'm saying? We've got to show why the God of the Bible is, and the biblical worldview is correct versus these other worldviews. And so what I'm finding is that among circles where it's more geared towards like the new atheism and the Richard Dawkinses and all those guys, it's just not the interest, the interest just isn't there, for urban apologetics, because that's not the battle that they happen to be engaged in at the time. And then on the flip side of that, it's very unfortunate, but the black church is very much so unaware of not only the need, for, books like the Round Table, but then also just where they can go, get answers for the questions that their members are dealing with, so it's kind of like we're caught in the middle, between people who are unaware of the need and people who are just, I guess, maybe just unaware of the need in a different sort of a way. Does that make sense at all, or?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why one of the best reviews that we got on the book, was from one of the professors in, I can't think of his name right now, one of the professors and directors at the Denver Seminary Extension. And what I appreciated about what he said is that he says, we teach apologetics, we teach various different things. He says, but it wasn't until one of my friends was one of his ex-students gave him the book. He said, after I read this book, he says, I repented. He says, I realized that we have a lot of African Americans that are part of our institution that matriculate through our schools, and he says, I realize now after reading this book that we have not prepared them for dealing with these issues in their communities.
Right.
And so we have contextualized apologetics in our context, and I just thought, man, that for a white evangelical to say that and to acknowledge that, man, was huge. And so that just confirms that what you're saying, man. That and that was one of the reasons why we were praying and still praying to get it on the universities. It's in a couple of university libraries, so we're thanking God for that. We're also planning to get it on the curriculum, because what happens is that oftentimes, we don't have, we still have a couple of African American seminaries and institutions, but most of them have died out. You still got Morehouse, you still got ITC, a couple other places or whatever. But so when we go, the crazy thing is, so when a pastor or somebody who feels called to ministry goes to a university, and they get trained in these areas, they're not going to get trained in areas oftentimes that's pertinent to our communities. But if we can get the institutions to start pushing it,
right,
then that can help alleviate some of that gap.
It's funny. I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but I was able to have lunch with a very, very well-known apologist. I'm just going to leave him nameless, and this is no slight on him. But what happened was I was explaining to him the types of apologetics needs that we're running into, and he just candidly said he has no idea, how to address these sorts of things, and I wouldn't expect him to. That's not within his wheelhouse, and that's certainly fair. But I think you have some people who that I've come across, just in my experience, who can appreciate what it is that we're bringing to the table. And then I think sometimes, and you could just tell me, and maybe we can edit this part of the show out if we need to, but you could just kind of tell me your experience. I get a sense from some people that because they're irritated with the larger conversation around race in the church, and they believe it to be something that is unworthy of our time, they make assumptions about urban apologetics and kind of include that into that larger conversation. And because they're irritated with that larger conversation about race, they minimize the importance of urban apologetics. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think you hit it on there. I don't know other way to say it. I think you're absolutely right. Got you.
All right, cool. I'm just throwing ideas. I'm trying to get different people's perspective, man. So, so let's get it in here, man. Like, so with the round table, there's a lot of great content in there. If you would condense it down, what are 2 or 3 things that Christians should keep in mind as they engage individuals from these alternative religions that you mentioned that really are gaining support in our communities?
Yeah. I would say this. Maybe to start, I would say we cannot be intimidated or offended by their questions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we now granted, listen, the questions can come from different sources and different motivations, and some people are seekers. They're looking for definitive answers to some of this. And so you have the seeker, you have what I call the sabotager. Like, they're asking questions, but they're only trying to sabotage. They see Christianity as an enemy, and the black Christians as even a greater enemy. And so their whole point is to, in many ways, what I found out, in many ways, that they, well, truthfully, if I be honest with you, I think in some cases there's it seems like there's jealousy. It's like they're trying to establish themselves as a black orientation, be religious or whatever. And the truth of the matter is that the black church has still got a hold. I mean, we still got a foot. We still got major influence in the black community. And so, in order for them to get the followers that they want, they come after the black church members. So you got the seekers, you got the sabotagers, you got the sympathizers, and those can be those who are outside the church or as well as inside. And because of that, because you got what I consider those 3 groups, each of those groups are asking questions for different reasons, but they're still questions, and we cannot be intimidated nor offended by their questions, because if we don't answer the questions, then the seeker goes to someone else, the sabotager wins by default, so to speak, and then the sympathizer becomes a problem in our churches.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. So I think that's the first thing, and then I think the other thing to keep in mind is that sometimes individuals from the alternative religions have legitimate critiques of our religion. Okay. Yeah, and so we have to be a model for them of intellectual honesty. I mean, I think if we don't know something, say we don't know it. If they have a good argument, acknowledge that. If they find something to be problematic that we also may find problematic, go ahead and acknowledge that. Because one of the things that they try to do is they try to say that we're brainwashed, that we don't think objectively, as if they can just totally, as if they don't have any subjective perspectives. But the thing is, we become an example for them, that we're not afraid to wrestle with the truth, no matter how challenging it may be, and because we believe in the truth. Yeah, so I believe that's another thing, is that acknowledge if they have some legitimate critiques. Listen, I agree. White Jesus has been one of the most oppressive symbols
to ever pervade Christianity.
Oh, no doubt
I'm
about it.
agree with you on that.
Yeah, no doubt
right?
about it.
So we need to acknowledge those things, and that opens up for legitimate conversation. Because
Right.
you can go back and forth and be debating, but you can have legitimate conversation. And then I'll just say this too, in all of that, don't forget to pray for them. Now that sounds, religious and all that kind of stuff, but we can get. Because I'm talking from my own. Man, I'd had some conversations with some of these guys, man, and we 3 days in, and I'm going back and forth. He posts something. I'm busy. I'm supposed to be working on some stuff. He posts something. I was like, well, he clapped at me. I'm gonna clap back at him.
Right. That's how it be, though. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, man. So sometimes you just had to pause and say, wait a minute. Let me just. We realize that first of all that the God of this world is seek to blind the minds of unbelievers. This is a spiritual thing too. Don't forget to pause and pray for them.
That's good, man. That's good.
Yeah.
And I think it goes that point, and the one you just made a second ago kind of goes back to your first point about not being intimidated, because I think when you're intimidated, then you can kind of get in that fight or flight mode, and you just kind of become defensive. There's a difference between defending the faith and just being defensive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that when you're in that defensive mode, you're not likely, to pray for that person. You just want to do them in. You're just like, all right, I'm about to show them what's really good. Yeah, that's a great point though, man. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so, let me ask you on this too. I was kind of thinking about, kind of along those lines. Do you think that, I guess, like, do you pray before you get into some of these kind of conversations? Like, do you kind of take time to do that?
You know what? It's kind of a cyclical thing. Like, when I know, so the answer is yes, but it's like something that I kind of had to kind of be reminded of, in the midst of the conversations. And so it's like, especially if I know that I've been having these conversations with this person, ongoing. It's just like, let me start off, and then sometimes praying while you having these conversations. Man, sometimes you're having 2 or 3 conversations. You're talking to them, you're talking to yourself, and you're talking to God at the same time too. Man, it's definitely one of those things where you just kind of want to make sure that you're in constant communication with the Spirit. Got you.
Yeah. Let me ask you this too, man. So, one of the, I guess, themes that I run into, dealing with folks in the conscious community, is what I would call like former Christianism. I mean, it just seems like everybody's saying like, I used to be a Christian, or I used to go to church, and so on and so forth. And so they feel as though, that having been to church and back in the day, whenever they used to go, that gives them some kind of special insight as to the ills of Christianity or what have you. But what's interesting is usually when I end up talking with these folks, I find out that they don't really know much about the Bible. You know what I'm saying? It's like they don't really, like you may have been to church, but like they just make very elementary, mistakes from a doctrinal standpoint, or what the Bible actually says, or what have you. What would you say would be maybe the impact of biblical illiteracy in terms of maybe accounting for the rise of some of these groups that we're seeing?
Yeah, you know what? I think maybe a direct answer to that question is that the Black church experience can be an experience outside of Scripture, so to speak. And what I mean by that is that people come. It's funny because I've talked to atheists who love going to church. I mean, they are professing atheists, but they love to hear the choir sing. Right. They, we have in some cases, for lack of better words, perfected the worship experience. So people love to be a part of the experience. And what I found out is that they have that experience, but don't necessarily have Jesus or the Scripture. And you going to church and you grew up in church, but you never grew up studying His Word for real.
Right.
So I do think biblical illiteracy is partly responsible for this. But I think also it's interesting because like literacy on any level is a spectrum, right? And so,
Okay.
you know, when you read, using grade school, you can read on certain levels, kindergarten level and first grade and third grade and high school, and et cetera, et cetera. And what I found out is that it's kind of like, you know, in kindergarten you learn sight words, and the thing about the idea of a sight word is like reading with memorization, right? It's not analyzation; it's memorization, right? Okay. And I found out it's kind of that can be a form of biblical illiteracy too. Is that let me give you an example. When I first became the pastor of my church, oftentimes in Bible study I would integrate skills where integrate lessons where I'm teaching my congregation how to exegete, teaching them about hermeneutics, teaching them about context, grammatical constructions, all this kind of stuff. And ironically, I initially got pushback, right? It's like, because, because you know what? Because you know what we're used to, oftentimes people are used to is just give me the application, right? Give me the application so I can go, right? So, I equate that to being analogous to learning sight words, right? You know, so yeah, like so it's like, yeah, we won't, you know, people, and I get it, you know, you done got off work, you done worked till 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and had a crazy day, and you come to Bible study at 7 o'clock at night, and you ain't trying to think like that. You don't want to think, right? So just tell me what I'm supposed to do so I can go home and do it. But the thing is this, and there's a level of that where that's to be celebrated, like, okay, I want to apply God's word. But the thing is, we haven't learned how to really read and analyze and study God's word. And so you find out, you can have another level of illiteracy where people, they know the stories, they know some of the whatever, but you've never really dealt with it on a deeper level. You don't understand some of the logic that's going on with Paul's argument. You don't understand some of the historical background and some of the implications for archaeology and all that kind of stuff. And so what happens is then you get somebody who knows some of the stories, and then they go. And then somebody else gives them a framework for how to understand the stories. Because all we've used it is moralism, right? It's like, okay, like it's kind of like the Bible studies for kids, and you know they it's a story about the fish and loaves, and then it's used for, like, what's the lesson? Oh, the lesson is to learn how to share, like the little boy. Is that really the reason why that was written? You know? And so you have that type of illiteracy where people have kind of a kindergarten or first grade reading level, if you will, of the scripture or understanding of the scripture, and you know, that's understandable when the person is babe in Christ. But the thing is, you have people who consider themselves mature and don't understand this. And I'll say this too. Another element is probably. The onus is probably on pastors, right? We oftentimes, I can't count how many times that growing up as a preacher, my early years of my ministry, I've been in ministry almost 17 years, but where I'm told by a senior pastor or by a colleague, man, that's just for the study. That's not for the pulpit, or that's just for the study. That's not for the people, right? And you know, in some sense, you understand that. I guess you think, okay, I don't want to be just kind of giving them information, and it shouldn't be that. The information should always be relevant and pertinent. But that's the pastor's responsibility to contextualize it. People need to know why it's important for. Why is it important that we believe that Jesus is God? We need to know why we come to the conclusion from the scriptures that He is God. Like these things are important. You know, we need to know. We need to know some stuff about argumentation. We need to know some stuff about figures of speech. I mean, this is the religion of chemists. Some guys, then everything is always super literal. Yeah, everything is always super literal or whatever. You need to know sometimes, wait a minute, just because, I can't remember the script psalm, one of them psalms, it says something about, God,
is the sun
like
and the shield,
sun or something like that.
God is the sun, God is the sun and the shield is what it says. Yeah.
Well, God is the sun and the shield. But wait a minute, that's a figure of speech, bro. Listen, when I say that Jesus is the light, when I look up to my light bulb that's hanging from my cylinder, I'm not saying that's my God. That's a metaphor, right?
Right.
So it's like different things like that. Like we need to be able to have those type of teaching to understand the nature of Scripture, understanding the transmission of Scripture. This is important. And people don't know how we got our Bible. They don't know. They don't read the beginning of their New American Standard or their KJV Bible. They don't believe. They don't. We need to know that kind of stuff, man. So
very true.
I think so. All of those things together. When we don't address it, here comes somebody who think they super smart, and interestingly. I find this out too. Interestingly, people, we're in the age of information, man. So all it takes is a 15-minute YouTube video, and all of a sudden, some dude he's an authority.
Right.
So,
yeah. Very true, man. Very true. And I think that when, if we can be honest with people, say going back to your example a second ago, in terms of how we got the Bible that we have today, textual criticism, canonization, understanding those processes. Then when somebody does, link you to that YouTube video where somebody's talking about, this ain't the word of God. It was, was compiled at the Council of Nicaea or something like that.
All that crazy stuff.
All that foolishness. You know what I'm saying? You won't have like the shock factor and like that fear factor because you will have already been vaccinated against those kinds of things by having the correct information about how the Bible came about and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's so crucial. With that being said, I got to go here, man. I was debating on whether I was going to go here or not. But I'm reading through the round table, and each chapter that you have it's the name of a different person that you would be ministering to. Like you talked about that story, of course. And I get to my man Orlando. And about midway through, you start dealing with the Word of Faith movement and certain Word of Faith teachings.
Yeah, man.
And I thought that was very interesting that you went there. Now, I come out of a Word of Faith background. I would certainly no longer consider myself to be Word of Faith, but thank God, But I understand it. I have an understanding of it, and I was really I just thought it was really dope that you brought that into it. Talk a little bit about why you would have included addressing the Word of Faith teachings in a book that's really mostly dealing with apologetics with some of these other groups.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting that you brought that up, man, because this was that particular section is a section that I wrote, and McCall was like, "Hey, you think we're going a little too hard?" And I was like, "Man, no, man, I don't think so."
Right.
So, but you know what? The thing is this: one of the reasons is that, particularly with that chapter, that's the chapter of Eastern mysticism, I believe, and we wanted to try to first show how some of this stuff, some of these defections and the falling away that's happening, we wanted to show that some of it is being incubated right there in the church. Like we are actually festering it. We're actually perpetuating it, man. And so, and I know there's a lot of folks. I know that Word of Faith movement is a huge thing across this country.
Oh yeah.
And so we knew we were going to kind of get some. It's going to ruffle some feathers, but that was the thing. We wanted to demonstrate. We wanted to show that listen, we could be raising up anti-Christians right here in the church because. With Orlando, he's a black Eastern mystic that used to be a Christian and kind of have that strong Eastern mysticism background. And then when we talk about mysticism, as we talk about in the book, mysticism, mysticism could be a vision. Mysticism could be prayer, the burning bush kind of thing. That's considered mysticism. And so obviously Christianity has some legitimate forms of mysticism. That's not our problem. But with Eastern mysticism, we're talking about pretty much tenets that we've gotten from Buddhism and Hinduism and some of these other things that, and that's oftentimes what the Word of Faith guys are doing. They are taking things that are really not Christian principles, and they're taking things that are from these other religions, and they're trying to find scripture to try to justify that. And so as a result, man, when somebody leaves the Eastern mysticism stuff of the Word of Faith and then goes to another Eastern mysticism outside the faith, it's like, well, yeah, we kind of prepared them for it. So
wow.
Yeah,
that's a great point, man. I had to ask you that, man. I mean, because it's just, I mean, that's part of my journey as well. You know, I'm not going to go into it all here, but you know, I grew up, you know, in Word of Faith circles, and you know, by God's grace, he led me out of that. And it wasn't until I was out of it that I realized, like, oh snap, I was believing like some crazy stuff, like this is like I was like way off. You know what I'm saying? This is like, it's really wild, man. It's really wild. You know, so that's
you know what? The challenge, what makes it so attractive, is because it takes biblical language like faith, right? And it takes that stuff, and it's like, okay, and it's got like the intrinsic defense mechanism. So if you don't believe it, it's like, okay, well, that's your problem. See, it's a problem. You don't have enough faith, and you know, those kind of different things. So yeah, man, it's something that's definitely, I think, is worth conversation.
I agree. I mean, and it can be very difficult, like you said, dealing with it, because, you know, to us, I mean, that was just like default Christianity. Like, we thought that's just what Christianity was. You know, it wasn't until I heard the cross movement that I realized that there was, you know, because I've always been a lyricist, you know what I'm saying? And so when I was listening to the cross movement, I would notice they would say things. I was like, yeah, they're Christians, but they're a different kind of Christian than we are. Like something's different. I wasn't really sure what it was. And that was kind of like my step, you know, I think in the right direction in terms of really understand, like, wait a minute, you know, there's some things that we rocking with here that isn't quite right, you know. But that's a whole other story, you know. So let me ask you this, man. I mean, you know, I've said, you know, several times, I think it takes a certain kind of person to, you know, jump into urban apologetics ministry. I mean, it's just, maybe it's just a certain personality type or whatever that's like, maybe you're like me where you're just prone to argue about stuff. I don't know, you know, I mean, but what do you think it is, like, as a whole though, the church, I think, has been sluggish to address like these Afrocentric alternative religions. Like, you know, what do you think that's about? Like, why have we been so slow to get in the fight and really, you know, bring the truth, you know, to these Afrocentric religions?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I think one is those alternative religions got a lot of catching up to do, right? I mean, the black. I don't care what people say. The Black Christian Church is still the matrix of the Black community, and in spite the current anti-Black church sentiments, there is no institution of past or present that's done more for Black people than the Black church. So, I mean, one third historical Black colleges and universities are founded by Black church. Civil rights movement were led by the Black church. Most of your meetings and organizations of sit-ins and protests were organized right there in basements of Black church. When people migrated from the South up to the North, it was the church that was giving them jobs and teaching them how to read. So I think in one sense, that these other organizations they still got a lot of catching up to do, and so I think in that regard, it's easy for the Black church to kind of say, what they talking about? Like, they, you know, you ain't even at the table yet. But the reality is, yeah, you know, but the reality is this, is that I think that the part of what has caused us to have that conclusion is that we've underestimated technology. And and truthfully, when it comes to utilizing, engaging, and being informed of technology, the Black church is usually on the last ones to catch up, right? So Yeah, we use. I mean, and ain't nothing wrong with. And there's no. This is not a slight. To your more traditional churches or whatever. That's not a slight, but usually we are a little bit more skeptical of using technology and computers and all that kind of stuff. Interesting in the church context, we might use it outside of it. I just kind of give you an example. We have a church app, and you have a lot of people do the giving, like Givelify and stuff like that. But we have our own app, and people can give online and listen to sermons and all that kind of stuff. And I initially got pushback. It's kind of like, well, no, is it safe? I was like, well, yes, is this the safest? When you go do your online shopping, and when you go. When you buy your tickets online and all this other stuff that you do online, it's like, yeah, is this the safest? All of that, But
just because it's the church don't mean it's bootleg, right? It's just like
exactly. And now, crazy thing is now, if I got rid of it, I would probably have an uprising now because it's so convenient, right?
Right.
So you take that context and you say, okay, we've been kind of slow on the curve of engaging technology. And that means that there's a whole movement that can slip right under our noses, like the online community and the social media outlets, where all of this information has been disseminated, right?
It's funny you should say it because, I think about when you go to church and say that pastor who teaches his sermon from the iPad or something like that. It's like, ooh, wow, he's teaching from the iPad. It's like a big deal still. Or like when T.D. Jakes started preaching and he would have that headset instead of the normal microphone. He would come out with the earpiece joint. You know what I mean? Like it was like, oh wow, that's like progressive. It's
No, those are good examples, man. It's like we we got this skepticism, right? It's like, ooh, he ushering in the Antichrist right in the church, So,
right.
So, yes, I think that has been, because of that, there's been a whole culture that's been able to kind of creep in. Jude talks about they've crept in unaware, come through the side door, so to speak. Well, shoot, they coming in, they don't have to come through the side door. We bring them in through our iPhones and our tablets. And once we turn on and we log on to YouTube and all this kind of stuff,
right?
They're in, man. And so I think some of this has been underestimating how the enemy has used some of these technological advances and underestimating our need to engage this stuff on these particular contexts also.
Very true. Yeah. And I mean, as the Bible talks about, people got itching ears too, man. And I mean, I think that, and I don't want to use that out of context, but I think about like on YouTube, for example, I'm about to kick off a video series myself, but I do have a YouTube channel, and it just interests. I'm like, man, I'm putting out mad content. I put a lot of time, energy into the show, a lot of time, energy into my articles, and you could have a guy who can hit you with an hour and a half, 2-3 hours of just nothing but just nonsense, and that kind of have like 100,000 subscribers. I'm like, yo, what am I doing wrong just in life? How is that guy, doing so well? And it just amazes me, man. People will sit down and really watch a 3-hour video of falsehood. I mean, it's hard to get false information for 3 hours. That's next to near impossible. But somehow these guys are able to do it, and they have mad followers. It's crazy to me. It's crazy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man, and you ain't alone. You're not alone in your sentiments, man, because people say, pastor, people got short attention spans. They can't, keep the sermon short, but then they go right home and my sermon's usually not over 35, 40 minutes anyway. But to your point, yeah, you go and watch this stuff foolishness, and you're right. I watch it because I need to engage it. I need to be aware. And I promise you, man, it's like I get like 10 minutes in, and I'm about to lose my mind because I can't take it. So
I was watching a joint the other day, man. I think that dude, what's that cat? Kevin Wesley, man. Well, I guess he's just Kevin Wesley now, but this cat had a video. It was like 3 hours long. I'm like, yo, Cass is watching these joints. Like, these are the same people that can sit up in church and be done at, thinking about the football game after like 20 minutes. You know what I'm saying? But they'll watch this stuff for like 3 hours, and it's nonsense. 3 hours of nonsense.
Yeah, man.
It's just crazy to me, man. It's crazy, But I'm off on the tangent here, man. Rewinding back, actually, I guess to the beginning of the conversation, you're talking about how Well, secondly, you mentioned how these groups have some catching up to do, and just how the church has been involved with the community, and yet somehow that's still, I think, one of the main criticisms that we get. When you talk about these groups having so much catching up to do, yet still they got all this trash to talk about what the church is or isn't doing. Right. So I guess I would throw it to you. I mean, because you've got direct experience in this, based on what we were saying earlier about what's going on in Chicago. Like, right. What would you say, or let me put it this way: how does the church's role in addressing the political, socioeconomic issues that pertain to the Black community, how does that intersect with apologetics and evangelism among minorities, Black community, what have you?
Yeah, you know what? I think the starting point is American evangelical Christianity, particularly white evangelical Christianity, has made sometimes an ungodly division between what is considered social issues and spiritual issues. Mm-hmm. And the premise is often that these social issues are something that's separate and totally unrelated to the issues of the gospel. Right. And many people inside and outside the church have been brought into that. So much so that people are offended when they hear a critique of a political or social issue from the pulpit, right? It's like, I didn't come to hear about that. I just want to hear the word of God, right? Yeah. But the gospel message, the kingdom message is inherently political and polemical, right? To say that Jesus was Lord was to say that Caesar was not. Okay. So, all right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the gospel, the gospel not only has something to say about those things, but for ethnic minorities, it has to have something to say about those things. Because otherwise, the relevance of Christianity is called into question, right? I need let me say this: a Jesus that doesn't have any critique of some of the ills of society will be a Jesus that will inadvertently support the status quo of the oppressor. And yeah, so so at the crux of apologetic issues for the church in minority context is addressing this stuff, because the idea is this: show me how relevant Jesus is, and I don't know. I just feel like we have to go back to the basis of the gospel, man. He came to redeem the humanity of man, also, right? I mean, this is why in the eschaton, the end times, heaven will be set on earth. It will be a visible picture of what Jesus prayed about. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And the objective of the gospel is to usher in an on earth as it is in heaven living. And so I think that's the foundation of it. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that we got a long history of oppression. Minorities have a long history of oppression in this country, and so when people start to the new generations come up, you got some of the same challenges, but the new generations don't have oftentimes the faith of our forefathers, and so they're not trying to. They don't have the same type of patience for some of this stuff. And our forefathers prayed and suffered for centuries to get something that they never received, but that we are enjoying. And the current generation doesn't have that type of. We got too much. They just got too much. So you learn your history and you get upset, and then you see this stuff is still going on. And so part of it is this, is that when we make a division or this kind of distinction that there's a spiritual and a social or whatever that has no implications, we do a grave injustice, and which is one of the reasons why go back to a conversation earlier. That African American apologetics, when we go and learn about apologetics and sometimes white evangelical institutions, that it has no relevance, because we're trying to figure out. Wait a minute. My the oppression of my landlord and housing crisis and and all these other things, racism and police brutality and all this kind of stuff. And so a Jesus that doesn't speak to that, a Jesus that has no relevance to that, well, who want to serve that type of Jesus? And the thing is, we know historically, we knew him. The testimony of particularly the Black church has been a Jesus who has showed himself triumphant even in the midst of that.
Right.
And so,
right.
Yeah. So you just cannot separate yourself or separate those social political issues from apologetics in African American context, because the idea is, what is the relevance of Jesus? And if he's not relevant to my issues, then why should I worship him?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is that what many people I think misunderstand is that when you look at in any worldview, not just the biblical worldview, but any worldview that wants to be, taken seriously, right, has got to give an account for certain basic questions. And one of those questions is one of the most basic questions of philosophy in general is, how should we live? It's one of the most basic questions of philosophy, right? Ethics, right? That's one of the most fundamental components of philosophy. And so I think what can happen is when it's easy to dismiss somebody's concerns when it comes to just the big questions in life when they're standing on the street corner dressed in funny clothes yelling to white people. Right. It's easy to dismiss them. Oh, that dude's crazy, but if you actually listen to what they're saying, you find that these people are grappling with the same issues that everybody else is. The problem of evil. How do I make sense of the evil that's in the world and my narrative within it? How do I make sense of that? What does the Christian worldview have to say about that? Right. Or, if there is a God, how does he fit within this scheme of this oppression of it? Like, how do you have in the same way that someone would say, if there is evil in the world and there can't be a God, well, you have the Hebrew Israelites saying, well, if, there can't be this Christian God if you've got this oppression going on, in my backyard. It's the same rationale, but it's just in different clothes. And I think that many times people are dismissive because they haven't really taken the time to get to the underlying root of these questions, which really are the same root as questions that people are asking in every other community. And I think we've really got to be sensitive to that. And so when you talk about Jesus that's relevant, well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in what way does Jesus account for what's going on in my life? Like, how am I to understand that? That's what people are grappling with. And when you're saying that he doesn't care anything about this oppression that I'm struggling with, well, okay, well, you can say that, but I'm just going to go find somebody who does, somebody who does care about me enough to be interested in what I'm going through. And I think that that's a huge piece, man. That's a huge piece that if left unattended to, we, as you said earlier about, talking about the, we incubate, people to leave the faith and be these anti-Christians, man. I think we really do,
man.
So, but hey, man, I've enjoyed this conversation. I really want to have you back on, man. I want to dig further into, what you guys are doing out there in Chicago. That's a whole show in and of itself. I think that needs to be highlighted. And so, I'm just right now, I'm extending an invitation to you to come back on and talk about that for sure. But before we head out, man,
you just let me know, man.
There it is. It's official. Now I got you on tape now, so you can't renege, man. You can't go back on it. I got you on record. You know what I'm saying? But before we get out of here, man, I just want to give you an opportunity to promote what you're doing, any events you got going on, the book, websites, what have you, man. Just let folks know how they can get in contact with you and access, the work that you're putting in.
Sure, man. Well, perhaps they can start with, if they go to their app store, they can look up our church's app. It's the CFMBC for Christian Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church, CF as in fellowship, M as in missionary, Baptist Church, CFMBC. Look it up in your app. It's a black icon with a cross on it, and you can see some of the videos of some of the outreaches that we're doing, including peace campaign videos. You can sermons, all kind of different things. So that's one way you can kind of stay in contact with us. If you want to get the book, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it straight from the publisher, Zulon Press. You can get it on iBooks or Kindle. You can go into bookstores or even request it at your university library. So the book is called The Round Table: A Christian's Conversation with Marginal Beliefs Affecting the Black Church Experience. And if there's anybody that wants to come and be a part of the peace campaign, if you're in Chicago or somewhere near Chicago or going to be in Chicago, we'll be going all up until Labor Day. There's a few corners that it's going on. But the particular corner where I will be in churches of our district, we'll be on 119th in Michigan, which is a hot spot, and we'll be there this Friday, 9 p.m. to midnight. We sing, we do evangelistic preaching, we talk to people and pray with people. We even close out with the Lord's Supper as an expression of unity and pleading and asking the Lord to push back the darkness. So it's a great thing to be a part of. You want to be a part of it.
Awesome, man. That's great, man. Well, hey, once again, I want to say I appreciate you for coming on the show, man. To the listeners out there, I love you guys. And it's another episode in the books. Peace.